Hello, and welcome to the December 6th weekly JupyterLab call. Today we've got 15 people on the call, and let's see, we have a few things on the agenda, but not that many. Oh, okay, we actually have a bunch of stuff on the agenda, so I won't solicit as much as I normally do, but if you would like to talk about something, please add your name, and if there's something that's going to be a bit longer to discuss, put it in additional discussion. All right, why don't we get started with Jeremy?
Yeah, the first item, I think we already discussed it quickly last week. It's about merging the two meetings we have currently, the one for notebook and the one for lab. And the reasoning behind that is that most of the things we're talking about now in the notebook meeting are related to notebook 7. And notebook 7 is built on top of JupyterLab. And there are many things that are just shared between the two now. It would make sense maybe to merge the two meetings. I don't think we have decided on that yet, so that's why I'm bringing that up again. And there will be quite a few advantages, I think, because it will also put Notebook 7 more on the radar to JupyterLab developers and people adding features to JupyterLab. And that is useful because that's also a front end we should think about when we add something to JupyterLab to avoid breaking things. Okay, I thought you said something, Jason, but if you want to say something, feel free, no problem. Yeah, so trying to catch issues earlier could be one of the reasons for doing that. But yeah, also just attracting more computers. I mean, if you would like to work on Notebook 7, it's just pretty much the same as working on lab, but I would argue it's even a bit simpler because the code base is smaller. So it could also be a good way to start contributing to JupyterLab afterwards. So you could be like onboarded on a smaller repo if you are interested, of course. But yeah, there are other advantages, I think, and this also raises the question of the Jupyter subproject also in general. So we also have a subproject for Notebook, and if we start merging the cores, we start doing more Notebook 7 discussions in the lab call. Maybe we should also consider having a single subproject for the two. And I think at some point we were talking about something like Jupyter frontends. So yeah, I think it's not going to happen right now, but could be something worth thinking about. Maybe for the next two major versions of the notebook and lab. And the last item I had was so we can discuss that now or later or on the issue, no problem. The last item I had was about CI and UI tests on the JupyterLab repo. We are currently in a state which is a bit difficult because it's very tricky to know if a PR passes or not, all the checks, because mostly the UI tests are flaky at the moment. And it looks like we have a bunch of PRs and also issues. I think Mike listed them on Gitter earlier today, so I posted them in the additional discussion section. And since it can maybe take a bit longer to discuss, I'm suggesting we talk about that maybe a bit later today, so we have time to cover the other items in the agenda. But I still think it's quite important to address these issues because I'm suspecting many of us maintainers of the repo are, not very encouraged to go and review PRs if it's difficult to get a green mark. So we should do something about it. Yeah, and on that, any help is welcome, of course. That's it.
Um, Does anyone have a comment before I jump in with mine?
So I just summarize some of the discussions on Jupyter, and the ideas floated there were that because the current problems with snapshots are largely due to GitHub enabling concurrency and our tests not being adapted for that, we could just disable concurrency. That's a very easy fix. Second, there is a pull request already open by Frederick, which addresses quite a number of issues. It's still in draft, so I'm not sure whether there's much to be done, but we probably need to enforce going forward that UI tests are only added for when they are needed and covering only the region of the interface, which is required and nothing else. I proposed on Jupyter that maybe let's try to fix the tests for concurrency until the end of the week. And if we can do that, let's switch to a single thread. Because the concurrency really does cut the time, the runtime by half from about an hour to 20-something minutes.
I mean, that sounds really promising. Cool. I hope that draft PR is oh, Fred's on the call. Fred, were you gonna say something?
Give me time that I don't have.
Yeah. Do you want to reassign it?
No, I give a try tonight and let's see.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for working on it. With regard to Jeremy, your other point, so we have a few things happening in a sequence, and maybe we could use this upcoming time to elect new SSC reps as the good moment. So the EC election will be in January, so that no one has to think about this in December and when they're off, and so that the whole month of like the end of January will be the voting deadline, so that there's enough time sort of for anyone to come back and still have at least, you know, some working days. But it would be better if we're going to merge notebook and lab into one sub project to only pick one SSC rep instead of deciding that down the line too. So maybe this issue that Fred opened about the notebook and lab calls, first off, we turn that into a vote right now, and it'll be a vote both of the JupyterLab Council and the Notebook Council, and like either that, or actually we don't even have to put it to a vote if we feel we have consensus. Has anyone, no one on the issue has objected? Does anyone on this call, now there's 18 of us, does anyone have like a good counter argument for doing this? Or, you know, if we have consensus, we can make that be done so that we can then open up a PR and actually vote on merging the two sub projects as well. And that way we only have to pick one SSC rep in January instead of picking two of them and then figuring out which one of them stays.
To provide more context on what merging those two meetings would mean in practice is, I mean, like the past weeks in the notebook calls, we're mostly been talking about other things. You know, I mean, the most important thing for Notebook 7 maybe is accessibility, so that we have a Jupyter frontend that is accessible, and it's been identified that it's easier to do it on Notebook 7. But accessibility is also important to JupyterLab. So, I mean, we wouldn't bringing Notebook 7 into the JupyterLab code wouldn't hijack too much the code. Wouldn't take too much time, and it would also be beneficial. So that would be what we will be talking about most of the time, and also just in Notebook 7 most of the time we just pull latest changes from JupyterLab, check if it works, we make releases, and that's it. So yeah, that will be announcing like updates during the calls. Yeah, but yeah, Fred, you have your hand raised.
So it's not really about the meeting. Definitely in favor for merging things, especially because when we're speaking about technical issue, like it will help everybody involved to get insight of what's happening in the code. It's more about the representative. I think those two questions should be separated, and I don't think it's because there is only one meeting that we should only have one representative. Like for example, the Jupyter server, they are also basically hosting 3 sub-projects, and so they need to, like within the call, like in the last meeting note, they mentioned that they will need to run in that group of people 3 representatives. So I think the 2 questions could be separated. Like I don't have argument to say we should have 1 or 2 representatives, but I think it's a discussion that should be separated.
Yeah, what I just wrote in the chat agrees with what you say, basically that we can make this decision right now because next week is the community call. After that, many people are likely to be gone. We might not even have the next call until January. If that's going to be the case, we can make that be the first joint notebook and lab call. And at that call, we can then decide, all right, do we want to open this PR or not? We could still ostensibly hold an election in that same month because both councils will be there. Both of them will be aware that there's this, sort of sequencing problem, and we can solve it then. If right now we decide that our next meeting is both notebook and lab, because we don't have too much time to make that decision. And that sort of seems uncontroversial to me. Does anyone object basically to canceling the next notebook call and instead all the people who wanted to go to the notebook call come to this call?
Well, by the next one, you mean the one in 2 weeks? Because the one next week I thought was already canceled in favor of.
That's right. What I'm saying is the next one might be in 2 weeks, but 2 weeks from now, we might decide, oh, actually not enough people are coming or whatever. But yes,
Okay.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone object? I saw some thumbs ups, but no downs. Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry, I've lost the agenda. Who was next on the agenda? Oh my, there's so many windows.
Eric is next.
Okay, great. Eric, please. Thank you.
Cool. So I've been in some discussions with people about maybe gathering metrics for some of the docs pages. Something like a thumbs up or thumbs down. Was this helpful? So I kind of was wondering, we've been thinking about like how such a system would work. And I was wondering how like any of our web hosting is set up right now, or how we do all of that stuff. I'd imagine, I think we're using GitHub Pages for some things, right?
Yeah, some of the, well, what are you thinking of specifically?
I guess Jupyter.org, is that GitHub Pages, or is that like, are we hosting that somewhere?
I think at least some of it is, if you look at the jupyter.github.io repo, that's GitHub Pages built using Jekyll. So it's static hosting as sort of triggered by GitHub.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
Darian, sorry, go ahead, Darian. I know you're sharing stuff in the chat.
yeah, so basically most of our docs that are like software docs are read the docs. Some of our repos also have GitHub pages. So for like a lot of team compasses do, for example, and Jupyter.org is a GitHub page, and discourse.jupyter.org I don't think is, because Discourse is a backend app, so that's our domain, but it's hosted differently. I don't know that actually where that is. You know, we have a bunch of, like, mybinder.org is a Jupyter domain. There's a bunch of domains that have their own thing, but if you're asking specifically about docs, I think that covers most of it.
So I think anyway, like one of the underlying issues is like, if we were to do this thumbs up, thumbs down on docs pages, where would like requests for that go? Where would we record that information? Because I'm not sure if this can be done just via like a GitHub repository. I'd imagine we would eventually hit rate limits potentially. I don't know if anybody has any additional thoughts about that.
Well, so I guess, how do other people solve this problem? Have you seen like that kind of thing on any open source projects page, or even not an open source project, but a project that's used, like there might be services, for example, that we might consider that are like, we have paid for other services, maybe,
Yeah.
but this is the kind of thing where we should just ask, how's this problem normally solved, and try to solve it that way. I don't really know.
I've definitely seen commercial paid for services for hosting this kind of thing, but yeah, I wasn't sure if there's any hosting that we have that we could hook into.
Well, there's, Mike just linked a service that does this. I'm pretty sure what that will create. Well, I'm not pretty sure. I wonder if that will create the need then for our pages to display consent warnings in the EU and in the UK. Because we basically don't use cookies, so we don't need to do that, right? If we start using a service, unless it has a mode that guarantees, you know, you don't have to do that, then you'll go to Jupyter.org for docs and you might get like a consent warning. I'm not sure. That's something we should investigate.
There are a couple that don't trigger warnings. One of the ones that was discussed about is Matomo. There is another one, I don't remember, plausible.io. The problem is that we get so many page views that it's quite expensive. And you probably want to move that at NumFocus level and ask NumFocus infrastructure committee whether something like that is interesting at the PyData level, where they would have one instance, self-hosted or whatever, and every project could subscribe to it. That would be the best way forward.
I mean, here's the thing. What question are we trying to answer by getting metrics? Because, for example, Google Analytics is run by Google, which sells advertising. We're not interested in advertising. I've had conversations where we've talked about, well, we need to target the most viewed documents for the most attention, but that also is inaccurate, because what if we have really useful documentation that isn't getting seen?
Right.
We need to be able to look at that. So what is the goal of this, rather than besides just getting numbers?
I think the goal would be improved documentation. As you said, some of that information there are some metrics and some insights we can gather from just which pages are viewed more. And, you know, I described a simple thumbs up, thumbs down because that's an easy concept, but I mean, you could do something like a sliding scale from, you know, a 5-point scale from not very helpful to neutral to very helpful. And I think we could get some meaningful metrics about which pages need to be improved from that. And then I also imagine as kind of low-hanging fruit, when someone clicks this because they're, well, this is very helpful, or, oh, I'm like super angry because this thing is like confusing, or it doesn't have my information. We can, when they click this feedback, we could pop up links to some of our other to like GitHub issues or some other places where they can provide open-ended feedback that we can then gather.
Mhm.
So
I mean, I like the idea of making it easy to report outdated information, because we've
Yeah.
gotten a few issues from people who have, say, gone through a tutorial, and then they said, oh, I tried to follow this, but this command doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like the idea of having a easy way to report it. I think like gathering thumbs up, thumbs down, or rating stuff, or like page similarities stuff. I've even seen like open source blog software that's like, if you like this article, why don't you read these other articles? Which good if you're selling lots of ads and you want sticky eyeballs on your site, but we don't have the same values.
Can I solicit a volunteer to go to that issue that Mike linked to and write a comment about how we discussed this on this call and would love that feature to exist and read the docs, and this problem solves itself?
Are you able to access that? I don't think I can see that. I don't think.
Oh, the URL just got double linked. Look at the URL. Yeah, that's what happened.
The one that ends in 89.
Yeah, so Mike relinked it in the chat. Okay, but yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing to do, and I also think like
Yeah, I can add. I'll add a comment there.
If there's a service and it's like reasonably priced, like we don't have to go to the non-focused level, and I have to imagine a service like this isn't that expensive.
I think one of the other problem is, what do you consider being the same page across versions? And that's something which is hard to solve.
Yeah, true. But you know, I mean, people often solve problems like this inside Jupyter, so maybe someone we know could do that. Okay, how about though we continue? Oh, Eric, you had one last thing.
Oh, I think we're doing demos next week, right? I have a work in progress hex editor, and I was wondering if that would be a good candidate for demos next week. If so, I can do that.
Just sign up on the agenda.
Cool, thanks.
There's yeah.
Okay, great. All right, Matthias, you're up.
Yeah, so hi to some of you that I haven't seen since forever. I was looking at Tidelift the other day. For those who don't know Tidelift, it's thing that tried to solve some of the funding of open source. So basically, Tidelift have subscribers that subscribe to get maintenance for open source software, and they give part of the funds to the open source projects that subscribe on the maintainer side. So I think via IPython and IPy kernel, or I don't remember which one, I signed up to maintain, and NumFocus is receiving the money. It's a small upfront investment because you need to set up a couple of things, like a security page and so on and so forth. And after, Tidelift give you money every month. And if there is a CV for the project, or if someone has a security question, they will contact you, and you are supposed to be able to respond relatively quickly. And I realized that because JupyterLab is about 20 NPM packages, each of those is on Tidelift and should receive about $25 per month if you were to register for Tidelift, which would give approximately 500 per month to NumFocus. And I opened an issue on discussion on JupyterLab Team Compass. I didn't see much activity, so I just joined this call to promote that and discuss it. So I don't know if some of you think it's worth it to, like, obviously I'm not a maintainer of any of those packages, so I can't subscribe for them on Tidelift.
So you said it was per NPM package?
Yes. I mean, I can share my screen and show you what I see from my side.
Because there's definitely more than 20 for JupyterLab.
I found at least 20 in Tidelift, and out of those 20s, all of them were, some of them don't receive any money, because basically they analyze the dependency tree, and there is probably a top package that receives a lot of money, which is distributed to all the smaller ones, but some of them don't receive any money. So,
okay, yeah. The correct number is more around 100 indeed, or at least more than 70.
Yes, but I can find only 24. I mean, I can share my screen.
24 on Tidelift.
On Tidelift, yes. So if I see the PyPI JupyterLab, I see Conda JupyterLab, but I think Conda JupyterLab has nothing. So this one should have around $100. It's super slow. I don't know why the UI is super slow like that. Those things don't change often. And all of those NPM packages, we can open a few. Some of them will have some money and others won't. You see, JupyterLab services would get around 25 per month. Same thing for Curity, same thing for applications. I mean, I know they are all maintained in the same place, but it's a way of, like, basically they detect each as different packages.
Wait, which one was 100? Oh,
JupyterLab PyPI.
That makes sense. Yeah, Andrew.
Hey, so I wanted to mention that, so I have seen that post on Team Compass, Matthias. Thank you for kicking off this discussion. I think it would be really useful to do this. Something I wanted to mention is that sub-projects such as JupyterLab or security can't make decisions about financial matters accordingly to our project Jupyter, like governance and policies. And so all of that has to go through the executive council. So to proceed with this, security and or JupyterLab group would have to write a doc kind of describing this initiative and submit it to EC for approval. And I added a link to the EC Team Compass. So yeah, wanted to mention that.
I mean, security, of course, because Tidelift is some part security, we suggest that some of the funds are would be earmarked with security. But I think it's fine with the EC because EC already said yes for IPython and another package. So I already been doing that for about a year. We've accumulated for IPython, and I don't remember which one is the other one, platelets. Across 1 year, we accumulated approximately 8K. And those funds at NumFocus are earmarked for security. So if ever there is a security problem, we can hire someone or fund something. I think that JupyterLab could come up with their own decision to split the funds. You could, I don't know, say like 10% is for security, which include, responding to Tidelift. Like if Tidelift has a request, you could get into the security bucket and use that to spend time replying to Tidelift if they have questions. And the rest could be for anything. The only thing that's right now, if we don't register with Tidelift, every month the money is just getting away. I mean, I don't have much problem with it going to Tidelift, but I think it's a wasted opportunity to let that sit for too long.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to mention that, that's a necessary step that we need to do. Yeah.
So, okay, the question I think Matthias is asking is, does the JupyterLab Council want to say, yes, let's do this, and then we ask the EC and the EC says, okay, that's cool. And then there's a pot of money that at some point the JupyterLab Council will have to decide what to do with. Is that the question you're bringing, Matthias?
It's just like, yeah, would the Jupyter Lab team would like to register with Tidelift and maintain these things at 500 per month is worth spending 1 hour per month making sure that things are synchronized with Tidelift. It was just, it's just, I know it's not, I mean, it's at the same time a lot for an open source project and at the same time not much at all. I know that NumPy gets close to 2K per month, I believe. So we're far from that, but so it's basically, yeah, is it worth it? If it was only like 25, I would say no, it's not worth it. But it's close to 500, so
What is it for notebook? What is it for notebook?
Oh, for notebook, I don't remember. Search notebook. 100 as well.
Okay, that's a bit surprising. I would have thought.
I mean, there are plenty. In JupyterLab, it's the biggest. Notebook is 100. But there is IPY widget, there is Jupyter clients, there is Jupyter core. Some of them might have $0. So IPY kernel is 100 as well.
I mean, it all adds up, little large rivers come from little streams. So if we add all of that up, it could be a significant amount of money at the end of the year.
So Jupyter itself, the meta package is 100. It's obviously not a lot of maintenance. JupyterLab launcher is 100.
We don't even use the Jupyter meta package, do we?
NB format is 100. Com is 100. This is Yuho, something went wrong. So I think JupyterLab, because all the npm package are separated but are in a single repository, is a small investment for a big return. Other packages would have to probably be judged one by one, but we could probably easily get 1,500 per month. You probably have to consider that once you register for one package, if it's distributed, it might decrease other ones. So that's why it's a bit weird. I can show you what we got from Tidelift over the past year, maybe.
You said that when we register, it might drop the other ones as an effect of people like donating towards one or the other package. But then is it also true that users of Tidelift would contribute more towards these packages, seeing that they are actually utilized and they are getting a return on that? Did you see that with other projects?
It's the Tidelift formula is a black box, so it's hard to say. But basically, we were expecting things to drop for IPython through time, but it didn't. So here is roughly what NumFocus has received over the past year. Which I think sometimes it's every 2 months, and for the first 6 months there were some administrative issues with NumFocus tracking which fund were going where. So it's a bit weird.
You looked at the Jupyter meta package. This is a pip package. We're talking about a pip package.
Yes.
Yeah.
What is the notebook? Do they have one for the notebook package?
Yes, notebook is 100. Approximately so far, and I'm just going to hand wave. Every Python package is 100. On the Jupyter, like the ones that receive money for Jupyter are around 100. Every npm package I've seen is around 25. for those who received money. You have other packages that receive more. Like, for example, I'm also contributing to Fleet, which is the packager for PyPA, which receives 250 per month. But the fund goes to the PyPA, not to NumFocus.
Okay. So we have a bunch more stuff on the agenda. What I would suggest is Matthias linked this issue. Let's change that issue to a vote. And include the council, and let's just either vote on it, or if there's consensus now, we just give you the thumbs up and go. So, wow, there's more people each time I say that. There's 19 people on the call.
Now that people are aware, I'm happy. And sorry, I will have to drop before the end of the call, and I can catch up with you online.
Okay, so let's then talk on this issue and convert it to a vote. Is there someone who can convert the issue to a vote, please?
I can do it.
Thank you, Fred. All right, and let us continue on the agenda. So, Mike, you're up.
All right. So there is a bug in a regression which affects Windows users using Chrome or Chromium-based browsers. And because that was reported several times, and every single time, like no one knows what happened, I wanted to bring that out to everyone who might know where a solution can be found and has a Windows machine. So the issue is that Markdown gets corrupted because on Chrome, when you paste things into the notebook, the line endings are not converted to the standard Unix. You get the character return and new line mark. And it could be that there is a problem in Market.js which renders Markdown. That's plausible, but it seems to me that it's likely to do with our migration to YDoc or something in that stuff. And I'm not very familiar with where we could strip that to prevent these issues. But it would be very good for lots of users if someone with relevant experience could take a look at this. So that's one point. The other point is a question about how we store settings for extensions, or rather not settings, but configuration. And there are two issues. One is for the released version with Extension Manager, which does some, well, where extensions are not found on macOS when Python was installed using Brew. And the other is about the pre-release, which includes Plugin Manager and reuses the same logic. And if the Python installation is not readable, it's read-only, users cannot toggle extensions. And that's because the extension manager uses sysprefix to decide where to write the page config. So my question to anyone who has more context on this is, what is the motivation for making sysprefix the default? I have my good guess that this is because it allows to isolate multiple virtual environments, having different extensions enabled and disabled, but just wonder whether there was any historical discussion on this topic.
Are you suggesting to use user instead?
No, I'm not suggesting, I'm just trying to understand the history on this. And whether falling back to a readable location is a good idea. And I'm very much not convinced that it would be a good idea, because if administrator locked the status of extensions or plugins. And we wouldn't, they shouldn't need to log the user directories and stuff.
So anything outside of sysprefix is a packaging nightmare, would be my answer to this, but I'm just thinking with my, Panda / packager person hat. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I see Nick's reply as well in the chat about user creating insanity, and understand changing things at this point is rather difficult. Just wanted to see if there is additional context. Okay, JupyterLab 4.1. So we initially planned to make a beta pre-release last week. It didn't happen yet. We didn't get to RC, and we don't have a beta either. So should we try to update the schedule to make a release candidate by the end of the year and a final by the end of January? Any thoughts on this, or do we think that we can still cut on how long we put the betas for? I'm personally in the opinion that we should push the deadlines. Okay, seeing just one thumb up. Jeremy, go.
Realistically, it looks like there are quite a few open PRs marked for 4.1, right? That would be difficult to get in quickly and make a new beta and RC. So I would also be in favor of maybe just RC at the best before end of the year, like you suggest. Yeah. Especially if we are also handling the CI, trying to fix it like soon. That's gonna also take some time. That is not going to reviews instead.
Okay, makes sense. So I could also share my screen for an email, but because there are 3 other folks on the agenda, let's keep that for the extra time at the end if we have one.
Okay. Good idea. Thanks, Mike. Jason W. and Tony.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure whether Tony was on the call, but he is. So Tony, did you want to talk about the community call next week? Tony, you are muted. You're still muted. But I'm hearing myself twice.
Is it working now?
Yes.
Any luck? Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony. We can hear you.
Cool, great. Yeah, there's an issue. Jason linked to it in the agenda. Thanks for doing all of that stuff, Jason. Yeah, next week we're having at 8:30 or at half an hour before the lab call. We're gonna have a triaging meeting for the 4.1 release. I don't know who's going to run that. I was kind of I don't know. We haven't really sorted that part out. But the reason we're doing that is because release is coming out soon, and we didn't want to not manage that. And then during this hour, we'll have demos. So if you go to any of the announcements, there's a HackMD link. Add your name to the agenda. And we look forward to seeing what you've been working on. It'll be recorded. And if you want to share it with any of your friends and colleagues or in any other meetings, please help spread the word. And let's let's have a good community call to ring out the year and see what all that hard work's been doing for us.
And just to clarify, especially on the record, so next week we're going to do the JupyterLab meeting at 8:30 a.m. Pacific, like a 30-minute session, and then have the community call at 9 o'clock Pacific.
Yeah, so anybody who's concerned about releasing or anything like that, anybody who's in the release process, we agreed to not completely miss time to do some work together. So the half an hour to the hour this meeting starts at is triaging for anybody who wants to be there.
And then, oh, go ahead.
I'm going to work up social posts for discourse on Reddit. I could also do a blog post if anyone knows. I can either write it up and send it to someone to post, or if someone can tell me how to get access to. Well, I know how to request access, but if anyone here can expedite that, I can make a blog post.
I'd say use the blog post afterwards when we have a video and stuff like that. I don't know.
We do have a pretty good readership on the blog, I will say. Like, given all of the chaos going on with social media, because like,
hey, whatever y'all want to do, it is.
Yeah.
Y'all do it. I don't want to do any social media stuff because I
say no more. But Medium, like Medium still has a pretty good readership, and Medium still has like good engagement, I've found. So if we can publish something,
it pains. Oh.
Tony, your connection is not working right now. I'm only getting about 10% of what you're saying. So yeah, I will say, based on my observation, Medium has been very reliable, much more so than most social media out there. So yeah, and people are also contributing stuff in the chat about this, so I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And then one other quick ping. I know we're coming close to the top of the hour. We have a Team Compass issue 197 host upcoming meetings. I just signed up to host one later this month, and particularly in January, let's make it a New Year's resolution to not just lean on Darian as much.
Well, I have deleted Darian from as a backup host,
Saw
so
that.
he's not in the table anymore. Like, he doesn't have a commitment accordingly to that table anymore. So we'll just have to figure out what to do if there is no one who like steps up to host.
Okay. That's all I have. Frederick is next. I don't know if you have anything else to add, because we were talking earlier about some topics.
I wanted to mention something. So I have sent a message into the chat based on like what Eric Gentry asked, like what is the process for getting access to blog post or social media. I mentioned it a couple of times. We have also, as a media strategy working group, asked project representatives to publish like this message to everyone. Probably it's, haven't reached anyone, but to essentially request a blog post or social media posts, please send your requests to this email. Is this publicly stated in the docs?
Andrew, I was just going to say, I can add that to the Jupyter.org docs, so there's some information about. So there's general.
We should really get to Ian.
Sorry.
What?
We will. It's okay.
There's another item on the agenda that hasn't been discussed yet before we get to the additional discussion.
So Fred said he has to leave and that his points were announcements only. These are things we've already talked about. Please go to that vote for the Jupyter UI toolkit. I think it's an active discussion still. And just another reminder that SSC representative election is coming up, and this is related to what we were talking about earlier with merging the projects, but that's fine. And that's it. So why don't we go to Ian next?
Hi guys. I am a coworker of Luciano. Nice to meet you all. I recently, I'm not sure if this is the right place to do it, but I made a PR recently, like an open source change. And then it was kind of taking a while to get approved. So I was wondering if someone could take a look at that and give me feedback and whatnot on that.
So it looks, I'm looking at this right now. It looks like Mike just added a comment just in the last few minutes. And Frederick had left you some comments, but then you revised the review. So yeah, thank you for coming here and asking us for that. I'd say take a look at the test failures that are currently going on in your pipeline, because that could be a potential issue.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you.
Also, actually, it seems like you can just hit the update branch button and automatically rebase. Maybe some of the CI failures will be magically fixed upstream, because I imagine there might be unrelated things in here happening. So that might help as well. Is there anyone who can volunteer to be a reviewer on this call?
We'll review that by Monday.
Sweet. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Let me rebase the branch and see if that fixes.
I was just going to add, I think as we were discussing earlier in this call, like as far as the GitHub checks go, the UI visual regression test check may or may not be relevant, and probably not relevant.
Okay, but everything else should pass.
Okay, great. So? Well, thank you. I mean, we'll see, right?
Yeah. Or I mean, in terms of like standard for like getting approved.
Yeah, I mean, it's more a question of like, you responded to a review, can someone re-review? And that's it, right? So
yeah.
And thank you, Mike, for agreeing to. Okay. We do have an additional discussion section, but we're also at the top of the hour, so I'm going to stop recording. Brace yourselves.